The deal was struck under 3 suns blazing over the market moons of Urelk, where cries of currency echoed between beasts and brokers, and her name was not even spoken, just a designation. Lot 17. Skin like starlight, eyes reflecting nebulae, a woman of the Alinari people, ancient and powerful. And now, quietly desperate, they needed food. They needed medicine. And Earth had both. So Earth asked for something priceless. And she was it. Her family wrapped her in the ceremonial silver garb, not because it honored her, but because it was tradition. And tradition was all they had left. She stood silent as the diplomat from Earth arrived in his gray suit, his gaze soft, but unwavering. The trade was formal, efficient, cruel. She was handed over with an electronic signature, and the Alinari turned their backs and left her standing in silence beside her new keeper, who was not a soldier, not a collector, not a slaver, just a man named Thomas Monroe, who said nothing as he offered her a warm drink with shaking hands. Thomas did not take her to a fortress or a facility. He brought her to a house, built into the quiet hills of Colorado, where pine trees whispered old songs and the wind carried no judgment. The house was small, but clean, filled with books and woven blankets and a chair that looked older than space travel. He showed her the rooms with slow gestures, letting her choose her space, and she picked the one with the wide window facing east. She had been taught that humans were coarse, loud, invasive, and she was ready to be caged. But instead, he offered her tea and silence and space. She watched him cook vegetables with care, watched him fumble with Alinari translation tablets, trying to say welcome in her tongue, which came out as a phrase about river stones and polite cows, and it made her almost smile, almost, but not quite. The days passed without chains, and each morning he greeted her, not with orders, but with fruit and words slowly learned in her dialect. He asked questions not about her species or her planet, but about what made her laugh, what food made her feel warm, what stars she used to dream beneath. She answered, in gestures at first, then in soft Alinari syllables that danced like mist across mountains. He wrote her words on cards and left them near her chair, near her books, near her morning drink. He asked if she wanted to walk with him. And she did, slowly at first, then without fear. She did not yet understand why he treated her this way, why there was kindness instead of command. But she began to find herself watching him. When he smiled, when he tripped over words, when he whispered to the dog they adopted together, a one-eyed mutt named Fig. It happened during a storm, thunder cracking over the hills and wind shaking the trees. Thomas tried to close the windows, but a curtain flew into his face, and he fell over the couch, sending tea flying and cushions tumbling, and Fig barking like a star beast. And she laughed, not a polite Alinari chuckle, not a learned response, but a full, unshaped laugh, born from shock and chaos and something deeper. It echoed through the house, startled her even more than it did him, and he looked up from the floor and said with the terrible accent, "You laugh like sunrise through fog." And she laughed again, because it was absurd and lovely, and she did not stop herself. And when the storm passed, she felt something new in her chest, something that pulls like the old songs of her people. A message arrived from the Alinari Council asking for updates, asking if she had completed the terms of the treaty, if the human had bred her, if the human had claimed her territory, if the human had used her like all expected. Thomas read the message aloud, but slowly, as if each word hurt his tongue, and he looked at her and asked, "Do you want to go back?" And she did not answer at first, because she did not know. She missed the sky patterns of her home, the scent of the glowing moss, the chants at dawn. But she had not laughed there. She had not been asked what she wanted there. She looked at Thomas and asked, "What happens if I stay?" And he said, "Nothing happens unless you want it to." She stepped outside that night and looked up at Earth's moon and whispered old words of protection. They sat closer now, sometimes shoulder brushing shoulder as they read or watched the clouds. Thomas never reached for her, never presumed. But one morning she touched his hand lightly, and he stilled as if she were made of gold and fire, and she said, "Your hands are warm like home. Used to be," and he smiled, not like a man who had won something, but like someone who had been given a gift he never hoped for. She began to braid his hair the way her people braided for those they trusted, and he began to sing soft Alinari songs from the translation tablet, always off-key, always too slow, but with heart. She showed him how to speak the words with rhythm, and he showed her how to build things with wood and wire, and they built a bench together under the tree where Fig liked to nap. The Alinari sent a new message, this time less formal, asking for her report. Asking what she had learned, she sent back a name, not her designation, not her lineage name, but the one Thomas called her, a blend of earth sounds and Alinari music, and she said, "I am not a product, I am not a promise, I am a person, and I have chosen this place for now." The council did not reply, and she was glad they did not. She sat by the fire with Fig and Thomas, and she told them about her sister who used to braid her hair, and the festival where lights filled the rivers. And Thomas said, "Someday I want to see your home." And she said, "Someday maybe you will." She looked into the flames and saw not the past burning, but the future rising. Spring came slow to the hills, but with flowers that broke through snow and birds that called at dawn. Thomas built a garden box for her, and she filled it with blue leaf and sunturns and other things Earth had never known. She taught the local children how to sing with their hands, and they taught her how to dance in circles and fall in the grass. And one day, as they danced, she laughed again, not from surprise, but from joy, and the sound carried up the hill and through the trees, and Thomas turned from the wood he was carving and smiled as if that sound was the only song that mattered. She looked at him and said, "I never knew laughter could be a home," and he said, "It is when it's yours."